There's Just Something About Kansas City is brought to you in part by the generosity of our friends at the Cockrell Family Foundation, the Bergman family, and the Sherman Family Foundation. Thank you.
Welcome once again to another episode of There's Just Something About Kansas City. I'm your host, Frank Bowl, and as you can see, we're not in studio. We are in Lonnie's Reno Club in the Ambassador Hotel, and you know who's sitting right across from me. The one and only Lonnie McFadden, true Kansas City treasure, icon. I've heard you referred to as the Michael Jordan of jazz. How's that?
Whoa.
How's that? How's that?
I think that's more than generous, and I don't know if I can live up to that. That's what I think.
I think you all have already lived up to
God.
that, Lonnie. I tell you, it's incredible. You know, when you sit here, you are at home. This is your hometown. You're born and raised over by the Jazz District, okay?
Yes.
And your dad, of course, big influence. We'll talk about Smilin Jimmy.
Yeah.
And, you know, the chocolate drops
Yes.
and everything else that happened to you as you were growing up and how you got here. But your dad performed in the old Reno Club,
Yes.
right? I think with Count Basie and
Yes.
his orchestra and with the chocolate drops, right?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, that club is no longer there.
Right.
But now all of a sudden, you've got Lonnie's Reno Club. Do you ever just pinch yourself and just go, man, this has just been an incredible journey?
It's overwhelming for so many reasons. It's like, good example, opening night, I was just caught up in the moment. I was tired because we had been doing all kind of press things and promotional things. And I remember I was going through the audience, talking to people, thanking them for coming and hoping they're having a good time. And I got to a table that was in the back there, and it's a younger white gentleman. He stood up and he just hugged me. And he said, and he was tearing up. He said, "Can you imagine what your father would think right now?" And I was in this jovial mood, and the thought of that just got to me, because it's no way in the world my dad could ever have imagined this. He came up in a time when playing at the original Reno Club, he couldn't walk in the front door.
Right.
He, so even though he was part of the floor show, he couldn't go there on his day off and just party with his girl. And so all of that, it was like all of this went through my mind when this guy, and all of a sudden it got to me, and it just that moment put everything in perspective, how much this city has evolved and how much I have to be thankful for.
Yeah.
Because my father it's no way he could imagine this. He spent his whole career walking in the back door and walking through the kitchen to places that he was being featured at and stuff like that. He couldn't drink off. He grew up in a time when he couldn't drink off the same water fountains and go to the same bathroom. So for a club that pays homage to a place that he was a major part of, to carry his son's name, I mean, God is good. It's deep. It gets deep. Yeah, it really does. It's amazing. I'm very thankful that I'm living right now, and that I've lived long enough to appreciate right now. So I guess that was a long answer to your question.
No, that is perfect. That's what we're here for. And it is the history of all this. It is the history of what used to be Kansas City and now as it has evolved. We still have a long way to go still,
Absolutely.
But it still has evolved that point. And yet your dad never let that get him down.
No.
It never threw a barrier up in front of him to say,
No.
well, I'm not going to do this anymore unless I can walk through the front door. I'm going to do what I can do, and I'm going to bring it all to the forefront.
It's his whole generation. Jay McShann, Step Buddy Anderson, all the guys that I met as a kid, all of them, they had what could be considered horrific stories that they would tell, but they would be laughing and joking and drinking beer. Hey Jim, you remember when so? And so, even though I was hearing all of these negative things and all this, I took my cue came from them. Their attitudes and their way of dealing with crazy things was through their sense of humor and through the joy that they had doing what they did. They loved being musicians and entertainers, and so I always wanted to be one of them. I always wanted to be just like them when I grew up. So now I've turned into my dad. I wear cowboy boots. I wear a fedora. I mean, I shave with a straight razor. It's ridiculous. I think of some of the things that have nothing to do with my generation, but they have everything to do with his generation. But these are the guys that, I wanted to be like. These were men. These were strong, confident, joyful men, and in spite of everything that they had went through.
Yeah, and the whole thing as well, when they really couldn't go out then, like say they were done performing, whatever, they had to go back out the back door and leave. And your dad used to bring those guys to your house. He used to bring them home.
Yeah.
You met those guys in your living room.
Yeah.
Which is, just had to be so, for you and your brother both, just had to be so, like you said, I want to be one of those guys. I want to do that.
I mean, it was amazing. It's even amazing to me that I even want to do this when I think about it, because at the age that I am, I know what this looked like. My father had retired from performing. He had worked, he basically, when I was a kid, he was working at the post office. And every now and then he would get a gig because he still had connections with different booking agents from back in the day. And he would get a gig for my brother and I so we could get the experience and see what it was like. We had these tailor-made tuxedos and tailor-made sailor suits.
We're talking at 6 and 7 years old too.
Yeah.
For you and your brother, yeah. We're not talking like you're 15 or 16.
Yeah, right. I'm right, 6 and 7 years old. We had these tailor-made sailor suits, and my father was really in the Navy, so he had a real sailor suit, and we would do this dot, 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 dot. And these routines that they used to do with the chocolate drops. And he taught us all this, and he got us a few gigs, and I got so enamored by just the thought of dressing up, going out, putting on a pair of patent leather tap shoes, tap dancing. There's a band there, and everybody's laughing and joking, and they're gonna pay me for this? I'm like, where do I sign up? Now, here's the other side. I didn't grow up with any rose-colored glasses. I knew what this looked like I was saying in the beginning. The people that were coming to my house, other than Jay McShann, it was rough. Step Buddy Anderson, Orville Minor, so many people I can. Junior Williams, who sat next to Charlie Parker in Billy Eckstine's band. My dad and everybody used to call him Pee Wee. So many of these old guys that were not doing well. Right. They were not doing. They weren't living the life that I get a chance to live. So. It's I don't know, maybe I'm crazy that I even wanted to do this, because it was nothing about being around that would have encouraged me other than the joy that I saw them from them.
And saw your dad.
Oh, man.
They didn't call him Smilin Jimmy for nothing.
Oh, man, my dad. He had a bit for everything. He never met a stranger. It didn't matter if you rich, poor, black, white, it didn't matter. My dad could work any room. He had jokes for every occasion. They would be corny, most of them. But, I mean, people loved my father. The reason I can tap dance is because of how good he was with kids. My father, the way Ronald and I learned how to tap dance, I don't know the exact age, maybe 3 or 4 years old, my father would show us a little something. And then when we would get it, he would make such a big deal about it. Anytime any of his friends said, "Hey, Lonnie, come and watch this, watch." Hey, man. And he would, you think we won the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So we always wanted to learn another step. Now, let's fast forward to when we got to be 5 and 6 years old, and they actually brought us some patent leather tap shoes, and we actually started practicing. God, I hated it. Oh, I hated it. I mean, you know, I'd be outside playing football with my friends in the middle of the street. Then, Lonnie, Ronald, time to practice. I'm like, what the?
Your friends.
And then my friends would be like,
what are you
Lonnie, Ronald, time to go practice. Lonnie, Ronald. I mean, it was rough. It was rough because I grew up in the inner city. It wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, me being a tap dancer did not make me popular. Me taking piano lessons did not make me popular. So actually, when Ronald and I got to Lincoln Jr., we quit. We quit playing piano and we quit tap dancing completely. But yeah, I wanted to be like my father and his friends. I'm still trying to be like him.
Yeah, and I think too. I think the other part of this too. You talk about your dad, but your mom too. I mean, your dad and mom together. Your mom was the head of the PTA, or she was the head of the PTA, right?
For the entire time I was in grade school.
In school, exactly. Yeah.
While working every evening, she was a bartender at Hillcrest Country Club. Back then, it was a private country club, and she used to go to work from 5 to 10, sometimes 2 in the morning. You know, it's a country club, so it depends on when the last person leaves the bar. That's when she gets to leave. And she did that 5 days a week, and I woke up every morning to a hot breakfast. I had a full dinner every evening. I mean, my mom, to this day, I don't know how she did it, because I've raised children, and I wasn't able to do. Me and my wife, we did our best, but we couldn't do what my mom did. Right. My mom, she was the most selfless person I've met in my life. And to this day, one of the things that makes me come down here and practice every day is my memory of everything that my mom put into me. She sacrificed everything so my brothers, my sister, and I could be somebody, because we grew up in a rough environment.
Yeah, you did.
It was, you know, it was nothing around. Once I stepped outside my front door, there was nothing in my environment that would have encouraged me to do anything other than being a thug, a pimp, a drug dealer. You know, I knew a lot of pimps, drug dealers, and just straight up thugs that, you know, were just rolling drunks every weekend, you know. And so it's like I grew up in an environment that's what I saw every day, you know. But when I came in my home, it was like, I mean, I don't know how they did it. My mom and dad, I had a childhood that was as close to Norman Rockwell as I've ever seen. And I grew up, we had no money. Right. We had no money. It wasn't that, but I didn't know it. We had big Christmases. I'd wake up to like a wonderland full of toys. I go to bed, it would be nothing there, and I wake up and there's toys all over the place, bicycle. I don't know how they did it. So when you mention my mom, that touches me deeply, because I don't talk about it on stage, but it's nowhere in the world I would be anything or have any kind of class or any kind of scruples without the love and guidance of my mom, because she put everything into us. And I've told my kids, I don't even remember my mom ever going shopping for herself. I don't have any memory of her going out and then coming home with a dress or a new pantsuit or new shoes. But every year, we started every school year with brand new clothes from J.C. Penney's or Sears and Roebuck. I remember going to Sears and Roebuck. I don't know if any of y'all old enough to remember.
Oh yeah, I'm old enough.
Okay, well yeah, every year we would go to Sears and Roebuck and get brand new clothes for school. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, my mom was, I don't know anybody like my mom. She was unbelievable. And to this day, that keeps me, whenever I'm tired and I don't feel like practicing, something in the back of my mind thinks of how much my mother put into me, and I'm like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pick up the trumpet, you know. I feel like I used to talk to my brother about it. I feel like I owe it to them to at least be whatever I can accomplish doing this before I get out of here. I'm still going for it. I still practice every day.
Yeah.
I would be practicing right now if we weren't sitting there
If
talking.
I didn't interrupt you.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean it like
better.
no,
Yes, you did. But it's okay. I've got you
I'm
now.
good.
I've
I'm
got
good.
you now. Okay. But I think also with your mom and dad, they knew where you were. They knew the environment that was surrounding you, and that's why they called you in off the street to practice. They had to get you involved in something, and they never quit. I mean,
No,
they never stopped trying and stopped steering you down the right path. And I think that was
You're right.
That was so. It's still with you today when you say, I still go out, I got to practice.
Yeah.
You're still getting called in. Come on in. Time to pray. You hear it's in the back of your brain somewhere.
It is.
You know?
It is every day. It wakes me up. You know, I'll be sitting down having coffee with my wife, and it's almost like a urge. I don't know what it is. It's like, okay, I gotta go, and I go down to the basement and pick up the trumpet and every morning.
So you're going through here. You and your brother, and you're still young. You're getting into grade school now. You're in grade school and doing your thing. Was there ever a time when you thought, I don't want to do this anymore? You know, especially you said about tapping. You didn't really want to tap that much anymore because it was a lot of work. But was there ever a time when you sort of said, I really don't want to do this?
No. There was a time that I tried to stop because I went through a period in my life in the in 2001, actually. I don't have to guess when. I got divorced, and that threw me. I mean, we had 6 kids, 2 properties, and I didn't. We've been married 21 years. I didn't see it coming, and that completely threw me. I mean, that's the only time in my life when I didn't know who I was. So it took me quite a while to find me. So I left Kansas City, went to North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. I was recruited to be a musical director. This lady had 2 nightclubs. She had a R&B, a classic R&B nightclub, and a swing club. And she knew my brother and I from seeing us with Wayne Newton.
Right.
So she liked the way she used to hire us to come to her swing club, and she noticed the way I would conduct the band when I didn't know she was watching, but we'd have sound check, and the way that I would do the band, she noticed it. So when she needed a musical director, I mean, the timing was perfect. She called me and she said, she wanted Ronald and I both to come down there, but she needed somebody to run the band. Mm-hmm. And Ronald didn't want to leave Kansas City. I needed to leave Kansas. I just went through a divorce. So I went down there and I was doing that. Then I got this call about 8 months later from my ex-wife. Said, let's try to put this together. And that totally, I mean, I guess I had tried to not deal with the fact that I was still in love with her. And then when I got that phone call, everything just melted. I said, yeah, let's do it. So I came back to Kansas City. And this time, what I did differently is like, back the first time I was all over the place. Ronald and I were going to Europe and Japan and all over the place. And then we got with Wayne Newton. So I'd be in town maybe 2 weeks. I was gone for 5, and then in town for a week, gone for 2 months. And so this time when the gigs started getting scarce around here, instead of me getting on the phone and trying to get out of here, I said, okay, it's time to grow up. So I put on a suit and tie, and we were staying out in Shawnee. And I decided, I know how to sell. I've had odd jobs selling shoes, selling clothes. I said, I'm going to try to really just retire from playing. And I got a job at Aristocrat Motors. And I mean, I went up there and they hired me. I don't know why. I never sold cars. And here I am selling.
You sold yourself.
I sold me. I was selling $100,000 Mercedes and Porsches and stuff and like that. and people would come in from out of town and give me a call. Lonnie, where you playing? I said, oh, man, I'm kind of semi-retired. Ronald and I, we play once a month at the Blue Room. And what? I said, yeah, I just play once a month. But while I was doing that, I noticed my skills deteriorate. You know, and anybody that does this for a living, or anything, if you're a real athlete as opposed to a weekend warrior, it's a whole different mindset, and it's a whole different skill set. You might think that because you can go out there with your friends and you can dunk a few times, that your game is like Michael Jordan, but no, it's not. It's not even close. It's not even the same vicinity. And what started happening is after about 5 months, I started seeing my skills deteriorate because I'm at the dealership 12 hours a day, and I don't have no time to practice. And Ronald and I, we had gotten to a certain level, you know, over the years and going to all the festivals in Europe, and then with Wayne Newton and then Sammy Davis, so many things we had done. And now I'm at the Blue Room once a month, and certain things I'm just automatically used to being able to do. Ronald, we call a real fast bebop tune, pop. And then I get to my solo, and the fingers I'm barely keeping up. And I'm used to doing this almost in my sleep. I mean, we started off doing 6 shows a day, 6 days a week at Worlds of Fun. So I mean, we used to tell the drummer at this bebop medley thing, when we started, it's the count-off's on you, because you the one has to realize that I'm gonna play forever, Ronald's gonna play forever, the piano's gonna play, then at the end, you're gonna do a solo. So you count it out fast as you want to, knowing that at the end, it's all you. And so we would play with drummers that would play at ridiculous speeds, and I could sit and thumb the pages of a magazine because I'm doing it every night.
Right.
6 nights a week, 6 days a week, six times a day, 6 days a week. So you develop certain dexterity, and even with our dancing, we were doing don't mean a thing, ain't got that. Then we get to the dance. No problem. I mean, Ronald and I used to talk with each other while we're doing this stuff. Yeah, so on. And we jumping up doing the splits and all kind of stuff. But then, after not doing it every day and spending 12 hours a day running out to cars and taking people on test drives, sitting at your desk behind the computer on the phone, and you're not. So I started seeing myself deteriorate, and that's the only time I tried to stop. But then, let's fast forward after about a year and a half of that. By then, I'd moved over to the Honda dealership because it was easier to sell a $25,000 car than it was to sell a $100,000 big body Mercedes S500. You know, so. And one day, my kids, because it was I guess it must have been during a holiday thing or something, or a weekend. But yeah, it was a weekend. I'm in my apartment. Me and my ex-wife it's not gonna work. I know it's not gonna work now. So I moved out. I'm in an apartment, and I'm getting ready to go in. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm putting on a suit and tie, and something just happened. I'm looking in the mirror at myself at 7 in the morning, and I'm like, what are you doing? You don't have your wife. You don't have your kids. You're in this apartment. Why are you doing this? I said, I'm gonna quit. And I just went in. It was first part of January, which any musician will tell you, that's not the month you want to quit your day job and start looking for work.
The holidays are over.
They're over.
Yeah.
And so I went in and I decided the only thing I knew I could control is being able to play. Whenever I'm on stage, it's a euphoric feeling, and it's always been like that. From the time I dropped out of high school at 16 years old to play with Platinum and her, and every time I get on stage, there's a certain magic that happens inside that I can't even explain. It's like, so I was miserable and I wanted to just be happy again. I said, well, I know I'll do that. And mind you, I knew that me quitting my job, that was like the last nail in the coffin. I knew once my ex-wife finds out he quit his job, oh, I'm so glad I'm through with him. You know, I knew that, but I didn't care. I was like, I don't have anything, but I can go back to music.
Yeah.
And that was the only time I tried. But I was trying to fit into a mode of what I thought, you know, benefits, you know, insurance and all the grown folk stuff, you know.
You didn't want to grow up.
I didn't want to grow up. It's not, I didn't get that adult gene.
Yeah, that's okay. You have the other great gene, so don't worry. You're bound to be missing something. We can't all have everything, okay?
I'm definitely missing the adult gene.
You were name dropping there just a little while ago, okay? We heard, you know, Wayne Newton, and then, you know, we heard, and I know it's been Gladys Knight, Wayne Newton, Tony Orlando. I mean, you've performed in, you know, we're talking Vegas. If you're talking Wayne Newton, you're talking Vegas. Yeah. So you have definitely been all over the world with your jazz, which, you know, I think you sort of try to play it down a little bit, but that is phenomenal. You don't get to do that unless you are somebody and really have a talent.
Wow. Well, thank you. I've always tried to be kind of good at what I do. So
yeah. So you had to get back to practicing and going back to the thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So how old were you when you picked up the trumpet?
I was 10.
You were 10 years old when you picked up the trumpet. Okay. And so you played in the middle school band, I'm assuming, in a marching band in high school?
Yep, I played. Yes, I did. Back then, when you're in grade school and you start, back then the music teacher would teach at like 3 or 4 inner city schools. Like our music teacher taught, we were going to Linwood. He taught at Linwood, Booker T. Washington, Phyllis Wheatley, and I can't remember the 4th school. But he would teach at all these different schools, and I started playing trumpet because I wanted to be like Clyde Bagby, the guy that was the leader of Clyde and Him and Her. I didn't know him. He was the leader of Clyde and Him and Her back then. I just knew he was a teenager that was real cool. He had this old Lincoln Continental with what we used to call the kissing doors, or and I just wanted to be like Clyde. So he played trumpet. I wanted to play trumpet. You know, and then and it really took off. And you talked about Japan. I read an interesting story about you in Japan. You used to go over there for about 4 months every year, right? Yes.
To Japan.
Yes.
And you would bring your jazz with you and you rearrange or whatever. But the Japanese audience was pretty tough when you first started, right? Weren't they pretty tough? And then you guys had to incorporate more things in your show, like you had to get your taps back, right? You had to put those tap shoes back on.
That's when we start. Wow, you okay? You know more than I realized. But yeah, the first time we went to Japan, we were in Kyoto, Japan. Everybody in the band was 19 years old. Wow. I was 20, and the drummer was 21, and we went over there. Now, we're here. We are in Kansas City. We're playing in these inner city clubs and stuff. Basically, Chitlin Circuit here, Des Moines, Wichita, Minneapolis. You know, we're going to playing all these. But the thing that gets you attention and gets you out of that, and it's still like that, you have to have your own voice. Mm-hmm. And so, even though we were playing cover songs, we would have our own arrangements, and we would flip around, and that's what made us stand out in America and in the inner city. They respected that. So
because they'd heard all these tunes originally played, so you wanted to make it the McFadden style. Yeah.
Right, we were Lonnie in the band. We didn't want to sound like the Ohio Players or like Kool and the Gang or like Earth, Wind and Fire. We did their songs and we did them our way. And that's what gave us a good name in the inner city clubs. But when we went to Japan, they're used to hearing the record, you know. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing Saturday Night Fever, They want to, and the whole dance floor would be filled, and they want to hear it just like that. And so if we put a little spin in the middle of it, they'd be like, and so we started throwing the audience with the song. It would be something that they felt was familiar. And at the time, it was 3 bands. The American band, which was us, that was the star of the show. Then it was a band from the Philippines. They were second tier. And then the Japanese jazz band, they were just kind of there. They were good. But this was the pecking order of things at the nightclub as far as the draw.
They wanted to see the American
style.
Yeah.
They wanted to see the American band. And back then, this was 1976. It was the bicentennial year. We were there because of the image of Soul Train and stuff like that. They wanted a band that's like Kool and the Gang, that's like Earth, Wind and Fire, that's like the Dramatics or the Delphonics. So they wanted, and most of the bands in LA, mind you, we're in the Midwest. So I don't really know what's going on out in LA. I just know I'm trying to get a record deal. So most of the bands were coming from Los Angeles, and a lot of them were kind of clones. But they knew the deal. That was what makes them money, going to Japan and Europe and all that, from being a clone. We didn't know that that's what the game was. So when we got over there, it was, after the first few nights, it was rough because we were getting, we were the ones that had the star billing, but the Filipino band, who did sound just like the Stylistics, who did sound exactly like the Delphonics and stuff like that, they were starting to get more attention than us. And we're the headliners. So one day we were practicing, and Ronald said, why don't we put that, it's his tap routine that my father used to do with the chocolate drops. He showed us. It was called, and he just called it the tacit. That's basically, the tacit is when the band doesn't play, and they just called it the tacit. And so it's all this rhythm. And Ronald said, why don't we just do the tacit? Now, mind you, we got these big, this is the 70s.
Yeah.
So you got these baggy pants and platform shoes, no tap shoe. So what we did,
tapping in platform boots.
Yeah, that's it. Now, we hadn't tap danced since we were like 10 and 11 years old, so it's like 10 years later. And we got out there, and we went through it at practice, and we had the band, we were doing this song. It was a disco version of this song. It was a Whispers arrangement. I want to make it with you. Da, 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 da. Then, bop, we had the band doing stop time. Ronald and I did this tacit. We put the microphones on the floor so they could hear, and the place went crazy. And we said, okay.
Yeah, you knew.
Okay, we got to be visual. So Ronald started making up choreography. So every song we had at that point, we started being the Dramatics and, doing all this smooth
doing the
stuff.
steps.
Yeah. If we was doing Kool in the Gang, we'd be spinning our horns, bop, bop, and all this choreography. And then at the end of our third set, Ronald and I would jump out there and tap dance in it. It flipped everything. And so that's the way we got back into tap dancing. And Ronald, I was the leader of the band basically, but Ronald was starting to get good. He was hanging out with my father's friends that used to be in the chocolate drops and getting pointers from them. He after my father passed, it was a friend of theirs actually, named Cornell Lyons. He was with the Businessmen of Rhythm. You can look them up on YouTube. It's this dance group from here in Kansas City. They spinning trays and doing flips. Good friends of my father. They all of them was the guys. So when he came back to Kansas City, he's walking with a limp after all them years of doing the flips and stuff. He had a hip hip problem, but Ronald started learning techniques from him. He started learning techniques from Willie Williams, and he started going to the library. I mean, kids probably can't even relate to this. He had to go to the library and get these VHS tapes and look at.
Hold it. First of all, the library?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, let alone
so Ronald was going to the library, getting these Betamax and VHS tapes. Look it up, and and sitting down studying this stuff. And so Ronald started learning, in addition to what our father had taught us, and all the history that our father had taught us. Ronald started learning about all kinds of things and different techniques. And when the band broke up, I didn't know what to do. And had it not been for Ronald getting so good as a tap dancer, we could not have became the McFadden Brothers. So I took a job selling shoes on the plaza at the time, and after the band broke up after 10 years, and every night I would come to my mom's house. My dad had built this little tap studio in the basement, and Ronald would show me different techniques. Then he'd go upstairs and look at TV, and I'd be down there practicing for the next hour and a half.
Because he knew.
Oh yeah, I had to get caught up.
He had never quit tapping, did he?
Never. No, once we stopped, and once we started, I just did the routines, the same routines that Ronald and I did at 7, 8 years old. Same thing. Ronald had gotten so much, and so that when we went to Japan, the third time we were in Osaka, Ronald, at that time, our day off was on Sunday. Ronald was hired by the club owner to do this special show where Ronald was doing like a Sammy Davis thing. He would sing, he'd play his horn for a minute, and he would tap dance. He had gotten good enough to do that. There's no way I could have done that at that point.
Yeah.
Basically what I'm doing now. I couldn't do it back then, though.
Yeah, gosh, it's amazing. That I think that's really good for anybody who aspires to be anything or anybody. Okay, to do the things that you dropped back and sold cars, and then you had to drop back and sell shoes.
Yeah,
I mean, you had to swallow some pride and ego.
Oh,
that all of a sudden, I used to go to Japan all the time and do all this. Now I'm selling cars, or I'm not selling shoes or something.
Oh yeah.
And yet you always made it back to where you wanted to be and what you wanted to do, despite the fact, just like your dad, he had to walk in the back of all the clubs, and he couldn't come to the front door, but he never let any of that stop him. He worked at the post office.
That's right. When he was raising,
that's what I'm talking about. So you had that ethic from your mom and dad, and I think that's what brought you back all the time. And it was just incredible. I know they've done documentaries on both your dad, okay, and on you and your brother, okay, which has to make you just feel really good that's out there, that you. Boy, they did a documentary. I know how, just being here with you, I could just feel the fact, wow, they want to do a documentary on us? Why? You know what I mean? And yet the why is what you two had become. And from your dad.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm still, in awe about how good God has been to me. I mean, when Ronald and I, when they put up that plaque on 18th Street, the medallion, when they called me.
American Jazz Walk of Fame, man. You're American Jazz Museum Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I'm just doing what I've always loved, and I'm going, just listening to you talk. The part, I guess, that I didn't say is that when I quit selling cars and I had no family with me, that time, it was to go for broke. I didn't care. Win, lose, or draw. I knew I was going to do this. I knew what being my age looked like. But if I had to, go out and put my horn case on the corner, I was prepared mentally to do that. I knew I'm never going to not play again, because this is the only thing I can do that I can control that gives me immediate joy. I mean, you might fall in love with somebody, they might decide, I don't want you no more. Yeah. That can happen. It takes two. Yeah, it takes two. And even your kids, they might decide, I don't want to do life the way you taught me. But the one thing that I know I'm gonna be okay with is what I do up here. As long as I practice and put in the time, pay the dues, I'm gonna have fun. We have a buyout tonight. I'm gonna have a ball. I know it. And I have no doubt in my mind. I'm gonna have a ball. I hope I'm good, but one thing is not an option. I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna enjoy every moment, and that is what I decided. And I was fortunate because I started selling myself the way I selling them cars, and I started putting dates on the calendar because when I quit, all I had was 2 Thursdays a month at this place called Vivace. It was a bar down on in the River Market area, real cool place. It had an ice bar. I mean, it was really. But I went from working there once every 2 weeks to I talked them into using me every week. Then it became the Phoenix and Plaza 3, and and before I knew it, I was working sometimes 7 days a week.
Yeah, and the Green Lady Lounge.
Oh yeah.
You have a CD from the Green Lady Lounge live, Lonnie McFadden. That had to be pretty cool. And that was just before here. Okay, that was back in 18, right? I think, and you were the headliner there at the Green Lady.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Even that, most of the really cool things that have came my way, I didn't initiate it or I had nothing. It's not that I'm so brilliant or so great. It's just that for some reason things lined up. I mean, John Scott that owns Green Lady, he saw me. I didn't know he even knew me, and he called me one day and asked me to have if I would meet with him about possibly recording, and he talked with me. Next thing I knew, we were not only going to record, but I became the every Saturday guy after things. After Plaza 3 closed,
right.
He picked me up immediately and said, well, I want you here every Saturday. And so it's like different things that have evolved. The way this came about.
Yeah, that's the next question. Did you ever, you think, you got Lonnie's Reno Club sitting up there, okay? And your dad, like I said, when we first started, he was with Count Basie at the original Reno Club here in Kansas City, and all of a sudden, you are thinking about, you know what? And with Ronald, of course, you know what? Why don't can we open our own place? How'd that all come about?
I wish, listening to you talk sounds like I was really a pretty smart guy. I wish it was that cool. This was a total God thing. Okay, here we are in the 2020.
COVID.
March 7th, the weekend of March 17th, St. Patrick's Day weekend, everything in Kansas City shut down. Mm-hmm. I remember it clearly because that was the first year since I had left Wayne Newton that I had my whole year booked. Every week was booked up. Every week. From Wednesday through Saturday, every week was, I look at the calendar like, then the pandemic hit. Nothing. So I'm playing once a week at my wife's church doing these live streams. And, that's the only place I could play. That again.
4 people in the whole place, everybody's got masks on and the whole thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and nobody's in there. Just me and my phone on a tripod. And I'm up there, the band, all of us are spaced out at least 10 feet apart. Right. And I'm doing these live streams. And then things started to ease up a little bit in June. The food and beverage manager here at the Ambassador called me. I'd never played here. And he asked me, he said, we got a real cool way that we're able to present live music and have
Supper
fine
club.
Dining. And I'm like, and he said, come on down there. So when I came down here to the Ambassador Hotel, I met him in the lobby. And he said, okay, come on. And he took me out to the parking lot. I'm walking out there. I'm like, what? And I get out there. And they had transformed the whole parking lot into a nightclub. They had these high top tables with black tablecloths on them. The whole pavement was carpet. They had leather couches, and Alexander Austin, the guy that does all these big murals all over the city, he was doing live paintings And he took me out there and explained it to me, and I'm looking around, I'm like blown away. He said, "You think you'd like to play?" I was like, and mind you, I had no gigs. I'm like, yeah. And so then he said, okay, we're gonna try for 2 weeks on Saturdays. So it was 2 weeks away. So this was maybe like the 1st of June. So it was like the first weekend, maybe the 15th. I don't know what the calendar was. So it was like the 3rd weekend of the month. I set up in the afternoon. When I get there here at night, the place is already it's packed as it could be during COVID.
Yeah.
So he's excited. Eric's like, man, this is great. And so I walk into a whole parking lot full of people. I play, and everybody's happy. And so the next week, same thing. I walk in, and I didn't know it, but Paul Corey, the guy that owns this hotel, was there that night.
I know Paul.
And see, I'd never met him.
Yeah.
And so I'm playing, and I don't know who's in the audience. I just know I'm happy. I'm doing what I do. And then one of the ladies that worked here back then said, "Lonnie, Paul Corey," he said, "Well, he's the guy that owns the hotel. He's here, and he wants to talk to you." So I've heard that before. So I don't know how this is gonna go. He said he wants to. I was like, oh, okay, well, hey, we had 2 weeks,
Yeah, right.
So I walk up. He's like, "Hey, I got this great idea," and by now I got my mask on. He's putting on his mask, but then he lifts it down. And he walks me through the hotel. Now, mind you, the hotel's empty. Mm-hmm. Ain't nobody there but the guy at the front desk. Nobody staying in the hotel. It's empty. So we walking through the lobby. He's walking me down the steps, and he's trying to explain to me about this event space that is not being used. So he walks me down there, and he's explaining what he envisions. And so we get to the what now is the front doors back there, and he opens it. We walk in here. It's completely empty. Completely. I mean, no furniture, no nothing. It was 2 great big bins of hotel laundry back there. That's all it was.
Linens.
No furniture. Yeah, linen and all that stuff. And so he said, I haven't used this room in about 2.5, 3 years. And then he said, I'm thinking about opening a 1920s, 1930s Prohibition-style nightclub. Then he looked at me and said, can you see the vision? And immediately, because my dad had performed, and I grew up listening to the stories him and Jay McShann and Step Buddy and all of them had told about the Reno Club, about Streets Blue Room, about the Cherry Blossom, it's so many places that I had all these stories about. So I started talking to Paul and telling him, I said, can I see it? Man, do you realize Kansas City was, and then started talking about all these places, and Count Basie and Lester Young and Mary Lou Williams. He said, wow, I love that. And he said, where would you put the band? Told him because this wasn't, obviously this wasn't here, And so we talked about that. Then he started talking about different drinks and stuff that would be reminiscent of the 30s. Mm-hmm. And we started talking about food and furniture and then and the photographs and the ambiance and the way that he wanted it to feel. And I started giving him different ideas about the way that my father had told me these different places were and stuff. And he just said, that's it. That's it. Then he looked at me and said, we're going to do that. And we're going to name it after you. And he looked at me and he's all, now I'm going to be honest with you. I'm thinking, somebody's had one too many drinks. I'm not taking this serious. I'm like, nobody comes up to me in the middle of a parking lot and says, we're going to build a club and name it after you.
Wow.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Oh, thank you. But then we're leaving here and we're walking up the steps and he pulled out his business card. And Paul, I've got to know him now. He always has this little tablet with him.
Uh-huh.
He's always writing stuff down. And so he pulls this tablet out and he pulls out a business card and he writes his personal cell phone number on. He said, I want you to call me first thing Tuesday morning with the name. He said, I'm very serious about this. I want you to call me he said, I don't care what you name it. He said, you can name it Lonnie's Cotton Club, Lonnie's Harlem Club. He said, I don't care what you name it, but I want your name on it. So you call me with the name of the club. He said, and I'm going to get with my team, and you get with your team. And I don't have it. I don't. Which is hilarious.
Hey, Ronald,
It's hilarious. He said, and you get with your team, and I promise you, we're going to put this together. We're going to make it work. He said, it's going to happen. I mean, and so I'm walking up the steps, and I'm starting to think, maybe this guy's serious. Now, here's what happened that clinched it for me. Right before I go, he said, I want you to meet my wife. I walk up, I still see this. It's like I walk up to Kara, and she stands up to shake my hand, and she just tears up. And all I could think of is, they've been talking about this. This is really going to happen. Mm-hmm. So as you can imagine, I didn't get much sleep, and I started thinking about the stories, and I started doing some research. And I just kept coming back, because I almost named it a couple of other places. But I kept coming back to the Reno Club because, I mean, my dad had performed there. Mm-hmm. Count Basie got discovered there. Even though it's over-exaggerated, they talk about when Joe Jones gongs Charlie Parker at the Reno Club. And so it's so many stories about the Reno Club that are major events that happened in the entire history of jazz.
Right.
And it's here in Kansas City.
Exactly.
And it was located just over here at 12th and Cherry.
Yeah.
So it was the original Reno Club. Not only was it close to where we're at, it had all of this authentic history. So when I called Paul, first thing Tuesday morning, I mean, it's nothing cool about me, as you probably get, you know. So I didn't have the savvy to say, it's 10. I'll call him 11:30.
Make him wait.
I woke up at 8:30, and
you're on the phone. 2 seconds.
I'm on my phone. I call him, and he said, Paul. I said, Paul, this is Lonnie. And I was going so fast. I was going through it. He said, Lonnie, slow down. He started laughing. He said, I love it. And again, he said, I tell you what, this is going to be perfect. I'm going to get back with you in about a week, and we're going to have a meeting. And he did that. And we had a meeting. And if I remember right, the only thing that was asked of me is, would I quit the Phoenix? Mm. And I said, it's a done deal. Sure. I already know that the only way this will work is if this is the venue that I'm performing at. Yeah. And everything just started to roll. The rest of the meeting, it was almost like that was the elephant in the room until I said it. Because once I said, then all the people from his office, they started throwing out ideas. They started asking, well, Lonnie, what do you think about? And so between Paul's vision and my little bits of history and the things that I was able to bring to the table as far as my knowledge about Kansas City and me being a part of, you know, I'm a descendant of somebody that was part of that history. So between Paul's vision and my ideas, it became what it is now. And I could not be, I mean, it's an unbelievable experience. I have never even had it's never been one time that, you know how and I've been doing this a long time, and I don't care if I'm playing for Wayne Newton or if I'm playing for somebody in Japan. Usually, there are suggestions of what we know how to make you better at what you do. You know, that's all. With this situation, even when I've asked, he said, look, I want you to do what you do. And because I even had, one time I was talking to him, he said, you ought to tell some of those stories on stage. And that's the reason that I felt like I had a license to talk about a lot of the Kansas City jazz history, because not only did he not mind it, he encouraged it. He said, "No, I like what you do. Just do you." And so I'm like, "Okay, I know how to do that." And so that's what our format evolved organically, of him having a vision and him allowing me to implement my style of Kansas City jazz, and to talk about the history and the heritage and stuff like that. He just kind of gave me a free hand to create what we've done.
Before we're done, okay, and I know we've kept you here a long time, let's talk about a couple things. The McFadden legacy lives on with Chloe, and I know maybe your grandkids might be a little interested as well, but you had 6 kids, and at least Chloe picked up the baton.
Chloe picked it up.
She picked up the
That's
baton.
right.
There's one McFadden out there to keep it going, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so I think that's great too. But God bless you with the 6 kids and the grandkids. You, besides here, you're a busy guy.
I'm a very busy guy.
And blessed.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good. I don't know what to say to that. You kind of wrapped it up. I'm busy and I'm blessed, and I could not be happier. I really couldn't. You know, when we finish this, I'll set the stage, and after I set the stage, before I go home, they're upstairs, but I'll put on my tap shoes and I'll practice a little bit.
Practice here. I can see the paint's worn off right here.
Yeah,
I can see where you're tapping. Okay.
Obviously this stage was built for me. That, you know, if you notice, the front part is wood, and back here is. That's because, like I said, I actually had a voice. I had a seat at the table in the building and in the design of everything in here. It's like back then the food and beverage manager, Eric Willie, he was the one that was always in touch. He said, "Lonnie, Paul wants you to send some photographs that you think would work. Lonnie, Paul wants to know how do you want the stage to be?" And I'm like, wow. And so I really had an authentic seat at the table in the design and in the concept and everything. And I just feel so blessed. I'm glad that I get a chance to talk about our very rich Kansas City jazz history.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I've always been proud of that. But, you know, I grew up, like I said, listening to the stories of Jay McShann and Step Buddy Anderson, Arvel Minor. I mean, I met Joel Salisbury when I was little. Betty and Milt would be at the house. I mean, it's so many people that I owe so much to when it comes to my style, because all I was trying to do is emulate them. I just wanted to sound as soulful as Eddie Saunders. I wanted to swing as hard as Dahoud did. I wanted to be as spontaneous as Eddie Kenner would be. He seemed so free. He was like Jimi Hendrix before I heard Jimi Hendrix. I mean, it was like, and so these images of the way the music should be played were embedded in me at an early age. And then, like I said, even though he didn't have the chops anymore, Step Buddy Anderson, who was the guy that introduced Bird to Diz, I mean, because they played together in Billy Eckstine's band. So I met all these guys, and they'd always be at the house talking, and I'd always sit and listen to their stories, and these were my heroes. They still are.
Yeah. And you are one of those people, we talk about this at the end all the time. You're one of those people, you performed all over the world. So you've been to Vegas, and you've been to all these hot spots for musicians and jazz or whatever. You could live anywhere in the world, and yet you live here.
There is no place like Kansas City. There is no place. Really,
That's my guy.
I mean, there is no place like Kansas City. Dum, 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 dum. Go Chiefs. I mean, everything. The barbecue, the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the jazz, the feeling. My wife gets on me because oh God, she thinks I'm borderline delusional. I remember we were in Chicago riding the Uber, and a guy was asking about Kansas City. I said, man, it's nothing that you can do here that you can't. And my wife's like, what did you say? I said, anything we can do here, you can do it in Kansas City. You might have a little more of it than, and my wife's like, what? And I mean, I said, our skyline, and then after we got to the hotel, and we looking at it, I said, Lonnie, next time we get to Kansas City, I want you to show me a place that even resembles what we're looking at now. And I said, oh, you just got to. Yeah, I am a little delusional. There's no place like Kansas City. I love it. I love the people. And like I said, I grew up in a time I couldn't even play on the plaza.
Right.
I was the tail end of what was really hardcore for my father and them. But look at life now. Yeah. How can I not? I mean, even that gives me a greater appreciation for what I'm able to experience. Not that it shouldn't, in a perfect world, that would be normal for everybody.
Sure.
But this ain't a perfect world.
Yeah.
And I've lived through some times that helped me to appreciate these times. Right. So, I mean, yeah.
And I would be remiss, just as we say goodbye here, and I could talk to you for hours, there's somebody else looking down, too. Ronald's looking down on us, and he's blessing you, and your dad's up there, he's blessing you, too, and yeah, just that's all part of it. That's all part of it. So, you know what I mean?
Thank you.
You bet. God bless you, my friend.
God bless you.
Thanks for taking the time. Yeah. Continued good luck to Lonnie's Reno Club. That sounds pretty doggone good.
There's Just Something About Kansas City is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization with the mission of documenting the stories that have built our city to inspire and educate generations to come. Our work is made possible by the generous support of local partners such as the Cockrell Family Foundation, the Bergman family, and the Sherman Family Foundation. For more information about how you can help us share these stories, visit our website at somethingaboutKC.org. Thank you.